Okay. All right, guys, welcome to the session. Um, boom. I'll read this out for you guys. Hold on. I gotta kind of get that on the line. All right. So, land acknowledgement. This conference is presented on land that has been stewarded by indigenous people since before European colonization. As we work to heal the destruction caused by colonization, we appreciate your support, solidarity, and continued learning. All right. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Sure. Yeah.
Sure. My name is Matt Feinstein, him pronouns. I'm from Global Village Farms, which is an education center and farm in Grafton, Massachusetts. And I also work with worker cooperatives. And I'm excited to be here with you talking about biocycling and yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Sharup Kumar. I'm with For the Good Public Benefit Corporation. We do business as Flow, and we're working on a social enterprise here called Community Supported Biocycling. It's all based on community scale anaerobic digesters in concert with composting and focus on farming.
Cool. And guys, I'm Vian Marisma. I'm on the board of NOFA, and I'm your wonderful host. Okay. So don't kill me, guys. Just all right. So how do you guys want to go? You guys wanna-
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, do you guys?
So we'll switch over to our presentation now.
See if we can.
Okay. See if we can get this to maximize.
Do you have to do presenter mode again?
Sure, but
Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for joining us again. We're here to talk about where climate smart agriculture meets circular economy. And that's in essence what we're doing with community supported biocycling. So it's infrastructure to help enable that circular economy, as well as to recover resources in the form of renewable energy and organic biofertilizer. So overall today, I think with the agenda here, we'll be just starting off with the justice and solidarity framing that Matt will help out with, and he'll go into the global village, the farm here in Grafton, and give you a good overview of what they're up to there. And then we'll get into the partnership that we're building, CSB, Community Supported Biocycling, as well as a process overview and the products that we're generating from these types of community digesters. And we'll wrap up with some case studies. And this is meant to be an open dialogue, so feel free to ask questions. We'll ask questions, and along the way, we can hopefully have a really fruitful discussion here.
Great. So many of you might be familiar with this framework from the Climate Justice Alliance and other um, international movement organizations. And much respect to the folks who are doing a lot of the work on resisting the old extractive economy, right? And the folks doing the engagement with policy and the advocacy work that's happening in lots of different places. Our project that we're talking about today is really focused on the building the new, right? The living economy. But this framework is important for us to see how we fit into a broader, movement towards climate justice with social justice underpinnings in every step of the way. But we really are talking about something concrete that we can see, we can feel on our farms, but that is connected to this larger living system of the new economy and the new society and the new living economy that we'd like to see. So that's part of the framework we're coming to with this. And the other important thing that underpins a lot of the work we do are the solidarity economy principles, very closely related to co-op principles, right? In terms of democracy and people that are most affected having a say in the enterprises that we're building, right? So in our partnership, we're already thinking about how to incorporate that, and it's pretty early stages in terms of, how we'll be structuring our partnership for this biocycling project. But we know that these are the principles that we want to hold, near and dear. So, important to do active leadership development and education as we go. It's not just a hello, welcome to the project. You got an orientation, boom. It's an active, ongoing thing that we'll need to be doing in this. Democracy and process, right? The people who are affected, the people who are doing the work and doing the consumption will have some sort of say, right? So that principle of that cooperatives stand by as well, right? The involvement and direct democracy, liberation culture and anti-oppression work at every stage of the way. Those who are benefited, who have been left out of, economies for many years, or more directly excluded from enterprise, and will be included, and we'll have to do ongoing anti-oppression work as we go. Shared resources and shared vision. This is something we're building right now, and collective care as we go to make sure that we're taking care of each other and ourselves. So those are some of the principles. And this is our farm and the site we're looking at to do one of these biocycling projects. We're in Grafton. We currently have about 2 acres under cultivation, a small CSA farm, vegetables and eggs and compost, right? We produce about 100 yards of really nice compost now, finally, after many years. Um, and we were considering accepting food scrap into our compost system, but we looked at the scale for that with our partner Cero that we'll be talking about, and it didn't really fit our site well. The food scraps have a whole another monitoring system and space need that wasn't as good of a fit. So um, we learned about these biodigesters, and we're thinking that'll fit a lot better. If you want to go to the next one. So we kind of have, the location of our current windrow compost, and then we could fit this biodigester in half an acre, somewhere that fits really close to our production, right? And can fit right into our irrigation system. We're thinking about, buffers between water zones, access to other infrastructure um, like water and power and things like that. So we're citing, we're doing environmental impact, or looking for funds to do environmental impact studies, but we're very excited to integrate this onto our farm, which is an education center too, right? And we already have our equipment operator lined up. My 4-year-old son, Micah, is very familiar with all the equipment that will be needed for this. And if you think I was joking, um, he actually is. Come solo show.
Amazing.
But in all seriousness, we are excited to have this potentially create jobs for our community. We work really closely with the Pecasapokenoket Land Trust and would love to see this bring a few jobs to tribal members that we're working closely with. And then the education and outreach components are really near and dear to our hearts, right? We're bringing school age kids to the farm on a regular basis. And it would be great to show them, energy production, fuel production. This is where the waste from your cafeteria goes for college students and things like that. And how this can all be part of our broader, food system and energy system, and be a demonstration site for that. So we're really excited about that. And we already run a lot of Black, Indigenous, people of color led education programs. We do intensives for BIPOC farmers and cohort programs and soil health workshops and things like that in collaboration with NOFA and Pecasapokenoket Land Trust. So integrating a tour of this site would be an awesome thing that we're looking to explore.
Hopefully next year.
Yeah, so I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Matt. So just to get some bearings here, I'd like to introduce the food recovery hierarchy by ILSR. That's the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And of course, when there's food, people should be fed. That's the first up here at the top here, source reduction in blue, is essentially let's not waste food, of course. Let's reduce the amount of waste we're generating. Let's actually get edible people to food to folks who need the food. So food rescue is the next logical step that's very practical and happening across the nation. The goal across the nation is to reduce food waste by 50% from the baseline of 2020, I believe, by 2030. And so that is quite a lofty goal considering there's more than 60 to 70 million tons of food waste every year in this country, which is a whole nother problem. So hopefully we can cut that in half. But the question is, what do you do with the remaining scraps? So home composting, that's an excellent solution. You're not moving the material around, you're putting it right in your backyard and you're able to use it. Unfortunately, not a lot of people do that. I think maybe the percentages might be a couple percent of households might do that. So the next best step could be a small scale, decentralized system. And that includes composting as well as anaerobic digesters. So who here has heard or has experience with anaerobic digesters? So few people, right? So it's essentially we're all anaerobic digesters, right? So it's essentially a mechanical gut, a mechanical cow, and you're loading in organics, and it's full of microbes. So it breaks down the material and it mineralizes nutrients as well as it generates a biogas. So that biogas can be used for renewables in the form of heat, power, vehicle fuel, cooking fuel, or even uh, especially potent like propane substitutes. So actually transportable and replacing propane or delivered fuels. And so that's where the technology is now blooming across the world for small scale systems. And from 2012 through 22, I worked at a company in Seattle that helped commercialize these systems. So we're here between small scale and medium scale is the equipment that we're talking about. So if you can't do it within your backyard or within your neighborhood, the next best thing is local conversion. And so at Grafton, at Global Village in Grafton, we're looking at teaming up with the community surrounding the area, as well as some generators of food waste from Boston. And so instead of them hauling out of state, for example, they would use this local community digester before going to these central plants that I mentioned. A lot of these are outside of the state or on the western side of the state. So there's a tremendous amount of diesel fuel needed to transport and then tip their trucks. So we're hoping to keep the resource more locally and convert it. And then, of course, at the end of this hierarchy, these are the things we completely want to avoid at all costs, which are landfilling or incineration. There might be a mechanical, biological treatment that's a little better than that, but of course, not trucking it around and converting it is a much higher value prop. So our CSB Community Supported Biocycling Partnership here has four key partners. Matt mentioned PPLT, Pocasset Pokanoket Land Trust. They're the fiscal sponsor for Global Village, as well as many other up and coming farms. They have programs through USDA, NIFA, and NRCS to help beginning farmers, BIPOC farmers with the right tools and the right know-how to actually launch their own farms. And of course, Global Village, they are the landowner, the project host and partner. They have great farm integration programs. And for them, potentially operation and maintenance with Micah and team could be an option down the line. Most important, though, I feel, is the educational value that Global Village is disseminating and really hosting. They're helping to train and provide the tools in the toolbox so that farmers can be successful. And this is hopefully one of those tools. The third key partner here is CERO Co-op. CERO is an acronym for Cooperative Energy and Recycling of Organics. They're located in Boston. They're employee owned and they started from the ground up. Uh, they, I believe, were founded in 2014. And so they're hauling 5,000 or more tons per year of material around the Northeast. And so for partnering with them and providing them the infrastructure so they don't necessarily have to go out of state. They don't have to throw diesel at the problem to, have it out of sight, out of mind. The goal is to now, locate this and convert and then return those products to the local community together with Cero. And then our company, we're working on the CSB partnership here. So we're providing technical and financial support. We're doing a lot of the grant writing. We've received a couple grants from Mass CEC, that's the Clean Energy Center. And we're working next with Mass DEP, as well as hopefully MDAR. And there are a whole lot of different grant programs that this really hooks into. So, we're doing the project management and hopefully the project financing along with the permitting to get this project off the ground. Uh, but there's a big component of the market development. And when I say the market development, I mean the actual product coming out of these systems. So this is an example of a liquid biofertilizer product from an anaerobic digester, and I can pass this around, and we'll get into this more. But well, this is a sample. This is made in Pittsburgh, and it's a great company. They have small scale digesters. I've helped to coach this team, and they are located everywhere from Pittsburgh Airport to Meta's offices. They're all diverting food scraps to the system. So here's a circular economy at play. Uh, sure, go ahead.
I was saying, what you're talking about is it's not a home compost, but it's a smaller one.
Right. It's larger than a home scale. It's a neighborhood scale system. I can pull up some pictures. I think coming up on the next two slides. Oh, okay. Sounds good. Sure thing. Yeah, we'll get there. So this is a circular economy at play. And if we start at the farm global village, it really goes from farm to fork back to farm in the form of the biofertilizer and bioenergy. I mentioned the partners here, and there are a lot of initiatives, for example, with farm to school. And it's really easy if we can close that loop instead of the school, disposing of that material. A lot of schools actually aren't even separating the food waste. So working with schools, institutions, and other nonprofits, food banks, we could help to divert more to these systems and then start that food cycle over again. Uh, so here's an example, another one of this biofertilizer product. This is a brand that we introduced in the Northwest. PBF stands for probiotic food for soil and plants. And this is a product that we worked with WSDA, Washington State Department of Agriculture. It was the first of its kind in Washington State. So we worked closely with them to show the chain of custody of where the material is coming from, how it's getting converted in the system, and then how it's being, essentially bottled into a value add product. So we had done multiple testing. I call it a panel, a full panel on the product, like a blood panel almost, in terms of nutrient content, pathogen content, as well as microbial content. And it's amazing what the effects are. So I'm curious, who here knows a farm or potentially themselves who here has irrigation systems? Anyone? A couple. So within irrigation systems, we're finding maybe about 20% of the water flowing through the irrigation system can be substituted with this product. And it not only conserves that water, you're recovering water from food waste in this process. So it's essentially offsetting local water with recovered water and then avoiding the need for more water because of what it does with the soil microbial, the microbiome, as well as soil health. It becomes much more moisture rich. It retains the moisture, so you don't necessarily need to irrigate as much. So in terms of low or no-till farming, this could be a great tool in the toolkit for to enable farmers to go no-till because you're able to apply this as a liquid, and inside the liquid you have the actual micronutrients, organic matter, as well as a microbial value that you're adding to the soil. Um, so has anyone here used or know folks who've used a foliar spray. Foliar spray as a great.
With compost tea or anything, yeah.
Okay, so similarly, this could be a foliar spray instead of a soil application. And we found some amazing benefits to the foliar spray, especially with powdery mildew. It actually prevented powdery mildew. And for example, squash, uh, growing squash showed about 20 to 30% boost in yield because of the powdery mildew that did not grow on the same crop. So I'll get into that a bit more in the case studies here. Uh, and then a couple other questions. Do folks use dry soil amendments or, for example, biochar? Has anyone used those types of materials? So that's another step where we can actually take this liquid material and make dry material. But of course, in that situation, you're ejecting the water. So the goal is to use the water as much as possible and then make a dry product if necessary. But that is a dry blendable product. Yes, the liquid mainly activates the biochar. So we're finding if you combine biochar with this liquid biofertilizer, it's an amazing combo. So here's an example of a community scale digester that I worked on from about 2014 through 2021. And this is located on Vashon Island, right outside Seattle. And it's a community scale system that takes about 1,500 tons per year. It's located at a tofu factory. And so that tofu factory will import organic soybeans from the Midwest. They'll make their tofu, and then what's left, kind of like cheese and whey, they're left with a liquid waste, which is like a whey, and then a solid waste, which is called okara. Okara is basically a soy pulp, and they didn't really have a use for it. They used to truck it around the island, land apply it, but it causes a lot of problems because it goes putrid. And so the odors are unbelievable for the community. And there have been stories of dogs and even people falling into these okara pits, and it's definitely not a pleasant experience. But overall, by installing this digester, we're able to collect the okara, put it in a vessel, right? So it's not emitting that biogas into the atmosphere, which is mainly methane emissions. So it's really potent in terms of global warming, of course, 80 times as potent in the 20-year time frame than carbon dioxide. So, the fight against methane is on. In fact, if we are able to reduce methane, that's one of the single biggest levers we have to reverse climate change, because methane is really heating up our Earth more than we thought so before. And so the idea is to collect all the biogas, utilize the biogas, and collect all the liquids. So this system here generates around 120 gasoline gallon equivalents. So that truck you see is actually fueled by the digester. We have an upgrading system installed at that site. So it takes the biogas and it makes what's called biomethane, or renewable natural gas. That's a substitute for fossil natural gas. So the tofu factory actually will also utilize that biomethane instead of the grid gas. So the fuel is sent to vehicles and equipment, or the actual tofu factory that has a boiler, and they're able to avoid fossil fracked natural gas. And it's quite a virtuous circle here. And here's some case studies I'd like to go in a bit. Uh, but let me just pause. I know there's a lot of information. So are there any questions or topics we should revisit before moving on? Sure.
So the solution that you're using, right? And you're saying you're using it from waste, and it's aerobic. So you're using a putrefaction process.
It's anaerobic, actually. So anaerobic means, yeah.
So, yeah. So putrefaction process.
It,
Yeah.
like before the digester, inside the digest is essentially um, they call it a bioreactor, in the sense that their bunt is a huge microbial community, and there are 4 steps to it. I think the first step is essentially putrefaction, hydrolysis. It breaks down the material, and that's where some of the gases start generating. So I think that would align with that first step. And then after that, there's this volatile fatty acid step, and then it will go through into methanogenesis. Uh, And along the way, essentially, these different microbes are breaking down the material, and then they themselves are digesting. See, there's billions of microbes in this bioreactor or tank. There's just no oxygen in it. So that putrefaction is a little different in the sense that because we're not introducing oxygen, the biology is very different from what would happen in the open air.
So is the that's interesting. That's interesting. Just because. So
Yeah.
how does that smell? I didn't want to open it. Like how does it?
Yeah, feel free. I mean, if
That kind of.
yeah, feel free. Whoever has, if you want, right? Yeah. No, I think hopefully in the growing sector we have a little more I don't know, I guess understanding of that being the smell of success in a way, right? That that is actually the successful biology. Yeah.
I'm cool.
Yeah.
Again, like patient in organic farming. I'm very well with like I've been studying it immensely.
I think it's worth if we can open that.
Oh,
Please. Yeah, so
Gets a soil test back and then you're told, oh, you're low in potassium, phosphorus. Like from that sort of test or like how would you advise a farmer to use that kind of product if they have a certain nutrient deficiency or like how does that apply?
yeah, it's not a case of precision product agriculture where there's a guaranteed content. On these products, unless you know exactly what's going to the system every batch, it's a continuous batch process where you load a receiving tank and then it goes through the feeding. Unless it's a specific feedstock, meaning what you're feeding it, you can't quite guarantee the analysis. So this is a very low form of NPK. I think it might be written on there. It's like oh, it's not. Okay, I think it's essentially 0.01 across the board. It's 0.01, 0.01, 0.01. So the idea isn't to suddenly give a certain nutrient, dose to the soil. The idea is you're slowly building up through bioavailable nutrients the microbial community in the soil. So the soil roots that go down, they'll provide the exudates for the microbes. The microbes will be much more diverse population to then digest the exudates from the plant, provide the nutrients back to the plant. So instead of providing an outside source of the nutrients, we're basically building the capacity in the soil to regenerate its own nutrients. So it wouldn't be something where, you apply it this week and next week your numbers are better. It's really a year over year improvement. But within the same season, we're seeing 20 to 30% boost, such as these crops here. Hopefully that answered the question. Yeah, I think right. Inoculant for biochar, for example, or yes, or compost tea. So we have done side by side. Actually, the next slide is a side by side with compost tea. So I'll talk about that in a bit. Any other? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes, this is DOT certified. So the U.S. Department of Transportation has a system in place for CNG vehicles. So, for example, all of the waste trucking happening in Boston, by Waste Management at least, that those are all CNG vehicles. Buses around the world, vehicles around the world. It's just in the United States, at a consumer level, CNG vehicles never really took off. But from a commercial or industrial standpoint, CNG is an excellent fuel, much more, uh, much more affordable, as well as much lower emissions from point source emissions from the tailpipe. It's 80 to 90% less emissions than diesel or gasoline.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So the combined heat power is what we'd hopefully do at the farm. Considering right now there are not many CNG vehicles. CNG, compressed natural gas, CNG. So abroad, if you look at Asia or South America, or even in Europe, CNG vehicles are are well adopted. Because for example, you can buy in Europe your car off the line and say, I want it with a CNG tank or a gasoline tank. And then there'll be facilities where folks can drive to. And most of those CNG facilities are fed by this type of renewable natural gas in Europe. Here, we're way behind. Here, it's just a paradigm shift starting to happen. So here's some, yeah, any other questions, by the way? All right. So here's some product case studies and growth case studies. So there's some amazing basil studies, turfgrass, squash, and clover over the years. And this is from the Chomp website. So they have plenty of resources there to share. But overall, we're seeing you can grow larger, healthier plants that are disease resistant with this type of product while you offset your chemical inputs. So, the plant and soil probiotics, they include this really diverse population of bacteria, protozoa, as well as beneficial fungi. And those are all necessary for healthy soil, of course. And they have a number of beneficial effects on plant growth and health overall. So, along with plant growth promoters, the actual microbes in a digester, they'll break down the food waste into the basic components. And that are the building blocks, essentially, that are readily available for plants to uptake. So those building blocks, the NPK rating, uh, can be as high as in this product 0.01 across the board, but it's fast acting in the sense that the liquid biofertilizer, it absorbs quickly into the soil and the plants. So the nitrogen is available. It's bioavailable nitrogen, and the AD process makes that possible. So it converts the organic nitrogen in food scraps to plant available ammonium through this reductive transformation in the actual biology. So proteins, for example, that go inside the digester, proteins break down into bioavailable nitrogen. And of course, as I mentioned, you can offset your water up to maybe 20, 30%. What's really interesting is the labor, fuel, and emission savings from this. So we'll go into that compost tea case where uh, we did a side by side here. So here's a farm on Vashon Island. It's called Forest Garden Farm. And this is their Instagram post from a couple years ago where they did a mirror trial here. So at the bottom, it's really tough to see this, but at the bottom here is essentially their mirror image. So on this side of their plot, they used PBF, the probiotic food for plants. And on this side of the plot is a mirror image without the PBF. They use compost tea. And in the process here, right next to this, you'll see business as usual to the, I believe, the right, where they have an aerator in a bag there. That's the normal compost tea brewing that they'll do. So they'll have specific catalysts and they'll brew their own compost tea. They'll aerate it. And right next to it, we provided the PBF and they treated it the same way. They aerated it and then they went out into the field. And here's a picture of what that field looks like with the mirror images. And they then applied it over the summertime into the fall. And what they found was amazing. It was PBF from VBF. VBF is Vashon Bioenergy Farm, where this digester is. So PBF from VBF was kind of the easy way to say it. That was clearly the winner with over 30% more squash produced and over 25% more total weight of that squash. And not only that, that actually reduce the amount of labor and fuel because these farms are going to collect these catalysts off island. So they would get in a truck, drive off island, collect their compost, collect their catalyst, come back and brew it. And we're saying you can avoid all that. Just use this product we made right down the street from you. And it's amazing what the effects are. So I'll just pause there. Any questions? And yeah. That was a tough part in terms of how do we show apples to apples on what they're purchasing and how we're competing with that product. I think the prices are all over the place in the market, depending on retail or wholesale. But in the end, we found out if we are able to charge maybe uh, $1.25 per gallon for this material, it's just above the cost of goods sold, as in how much it costs us to make it, and it competed on price for the farmer. So the farmer thought $1.25 was a great price for them to procure and then site these systems. So I can just pull up one of these instead of their normal process. So the quick answer is no, we don't have like an exact cost estimate. It depends on what they're using in the region where they're sourcing from. But here's an example of that forest garden farm. And so there's two tanks here. This is Paco. He's the operator of the system. This is Paco's truck that's fueled by the system. And he'll have an IBC tote, about 300 gallon, right around 275 gallons. And Lisa at Forest Garden Farm has installed one of these totes along with about 24 other farmers. So Paco will go and fill up that tank on a normal basis. The farmer will subscribe to a CSB share, similar to a CSA share, except it's on the business side. So the farmer now has a biofertilizer share of this community scale digester. Paco allocates that material, drives it out with clean fuel a few miles away, fills up the tank, and then the tank gets dosed into the fertigation system. And that's where they're able to substitute about 20% of their water and really have some amazing results. So here's a material registration certificate out there in by WSDA. They've approved it. They don't certify products, they approve them for certified organic growers. And this is some of the produce that we grew with it. This was in a greenhouse. It was actually, the greenhouse was heated by the system in the wintertime. And that way we weren't, we didn't have to use delivered fuel or even grid fuel. And the lettuce is about 900 head of lettuce, some of the best lettuce I've ever had, and everyone agreed. We actually donated all of this to the food bank on island so that we can now send, healthy, nutrient dense food to folks who need it, instead of actually competing with farmers, for example, in the market. We're trying to show the farmers that this could help their process. And overall, here's an example of that business model for a CSB. There could be a one-time purchase of, say, $1.65 a gallon, and they would have support and consulting for that support, as well as grants. But there's no guarantee of the supply. It's not really ongoing, so there's no climate action. We were actually working on climate action certificates because, in the end, for every ton you can divert to this, you could actually reduce 1 to 5 tons of carbon equivalent emissions. So there's a climate action certificate involved if they become a subscriber, like a CSA subscriber. And then in the off season, of course, if they're able to go for a year-round subscription, then we offer essentially at cost type of situation where maybe in the off season they could actually enhance the soil even though they're not growing crops. So this is kind of the proof of concept for community. And the system we're looking at out here in Grafton would be roughly 3 times the scale of that. And let's see if I can find, there it is. So I think that's pretty much what we had for today. And we do have a survey for folks if they want to provide their feedback. Yeah, might as well play a video. Great call. You any questions before I show a video of the system? And they don't have things in the soil out there. You would be able to put it in the process. Right. Yeah, that would be greenhouse. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great point. Out there, I think the hardiness zone is a couple steps up.
This may not translate to what you're doing at all, but I live in Cambridge, and
they collect, we have curbside collection of food waste
Yes.
that they call they call it but what they do is they send it to a digester on Deer Island, which creates a slurry. That slurry is sent to Lawrence, to a facility up there. It's mixed with human,
Humanure.
Well,
And
I guess compost pellets that get sold. And the problem with that is things like PFAS.
yes.
And so I don't know if you have any comment about the situation.
yeah. Oh, so many comments. This is yeah, that is a centralization process, and I think Cambridge hopefully will take the next step to stop doing that, because from what I understand, I didn't know it goes to Deer Island. I thought in Charlestown there's a core. Okay, a core. I think they call it core, and Waste Management owns that. So what they'll do is they'll make that smoothie at the core facility, and then use diesel trucking up to Greater Lawrence Sewer District, and that's also a digester. But like you're saying, it's a wastewater treatment plant. So the goal is here is let's avoid the trucking and let's not devalue that material into PFAS laden sewage, because then the product, of course, isn't viable. And then we're importing everything. So the goal is if you can side stream it, for example, that wastewater treatment plant could install a system like this. So instead of going into the wastewater treatment plant, they side stream it, but the gas that's generated could actually be pumped into that same wastewater treatment gas management system. And now you have a source separated biofertilizer. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And PFAS, yeah, is such a huge problem. The goal is, yeah, not having any of that go into this material. And that's the idea with CSB is it gives almost like a producer and consumer responsibility, a way to bond and connect on the consumers providing a clean feedstock that does not have PFAS, right? As being part of that production process. And it gives ownership to the community knowing that their food could potentially be grown by the product they're helping to make. So I think that is a paradigm shift. And yeah, if you have any thoughts on Cambridge or pilots, we're all ears.
The scale of things, and we have Boston looking into similar things right now. It's just the volume of food waste that they have is overwhelming.
It really is.
We're gonna pass this sign-in sheet around, and if you have interest in any, like, if it's the biofertilizer or the, more info about the digester, and we're trying to get a sense who's using irrigation, that kind of stuff, if you could please check off the right boxes there. Okay.
And very similar one, if this is electronic version, if anyone would rather take the survey electronically, or feel free to do both, whatever works. But I'll just pass some of these around this way. So do we have time for a couple videos, maybe? I think so, right?
Yeah.
All right.
There's all the subject for you. Your field of mind.
Well, it would be potentially in field applications through fertigation or year-round growing. Ideally, we'd like to co-locate, for example, like controlled environment ag with these systems so that it can be used year-round and we can produce food year-round. I think one of the challenges, though, is heating that system in the winter. Oh, really? Okay. Sorry about that. Ever Yeah. So if we could potentially use it in hydroponic systems or greenhouses that have soil in the off season, that'd be great. But for the most part, yeah, land applicate and soil applicate, not just to blanket land apply, but actually have a certain recipe in your fertigation system is the goal.
Because when you basically, once you take the gas off, it's got still a slurry of water, liquid, and solids. If you press like the liquid out,
Mhm.
is that how you get the product, or?
Yeah, so it's decanted The solids settle to the bottom and then the liquid skimmed off and bottled. There's a very low solid, basically all the solids in the system are being just, broken down by the microbes. So I think more than 50% of the solids are actually volatilized. And then the remaining 40 to 50% is mineralized. So it's like the gas and the liquid capture most of what's in the solid. And then if there are other solids that aren't volatile or they don't break down, that's what settles in the bottom. And that's actually fantastic humus we're finding, if we can just capture what's settled, it's an amazing, really thick, just like gold black type of sheen to it. It's amazing. Depends on the user. I think, some digesters, they'll use it on site. Some will dry it and then make a dry blend and actually distribute the dry blend.
So it's seed starter.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a pull up the company that makes the product that we passed around. This is Ecotone Renewables. And so here's one. Oh, it's unavailable. Huh. Okay, but this is their product. This product is OMRI certified. So the PBF product I spoke about earlier, that was approved by the state WSDA, and this product is the OMRI certification. So there are different ways to actually work with the regulators on the product, but it's an excellent, sustainable biofertilizer and conditioner that there's plenty of more data coming out on this. Just show this other video here now. Doesn't want to. It's not working here. Okay. Okay, so here is Lisa from Forest Garden Farm.
My name is Lisa Hasselman, and my husband Chris and I have Forest Garden Farm on Vashon Island in Washington State, and we grow mixed vegetables and cut flowers. We are constantly on the lookout to improve how we're growing, just generally improving the life within the soil, which is going to make healthier plants and healthier food. We were very excited when we heard about Chomp's biodigester producing a local plant food, and we started testing it, and there was a 20% increase in the yield over our prior fertilization efforts. And not only that, but we saw less disease pressure. So that was really, it was a huge relief because it would be less money, less transport costs, it's locally made, and we have seen more vibrant plant life, plant growth, and improvements in our soil. The majority of our farm is now set up on a drip irrigation system. It takes up a little bit of biofertilizer from the tank while the irrigation water comes, and then it drips out to each of the plants. So that's great to just have a steady stream. And another thing I really like about the biofertilizer is if you're fertilizing with an NPK, a mineral-based chemical fertilizer, you have to worry about over-fertilizing. This is all kind of microbial life that we're adding to the soil, so we're not worried about this abundance of a chemical that's not going to get used before it leaches into the watersheds that we're a part of. The whole field of us understanding how humans can fit into this environmental picture in a sustainable, healthy way, we're just scratching the surface. But you can see it when you're farming and crops go well and the community supports what you're doing. And it feels like we're turning a corner. Like every year we are improving and learning ways where we can actually address climate change through farming.
Lisa and Chris, they run this farm, and they lead the Vashon Island Growers Association. So they're able to share their lessons learned and hopefully help other farmers. Yes.
It's able to help with disease resistance and things.
Yeah, it's kind of unknown. I think what's happening is the theory, the hypothesis is that we're providing so much diversity into the microbiome that it just creates more resiliency so that the plant doesn't have to worry about fending it off by itself. There's all this living microbiota around the root system, around the actual above ground system, and it just becomes much more resilient. But there are a lot of scientific studies. I think our colleagues in the biofertilizer industry hopefully can prove some of these things over time and why they're happening. But I think it was Leonardo da Vinci who once said, we know more about the skies and the stars than we do about what's under our feet in the soil, right? So now we've really shifted focus, I think, as a civilization in the past decade or so to really focus on the soil. Hopefully, we know more in the coming years.
Is there anyone using this system locally or New England you're aware of?
Not in New England that I know of. I know in New York, upstate New York, Hudson, New York, that would be the closest chomp system. And I know in Danvers at Essex Ag, at in Danvers, Mass, National Grid has teamed up to sponsor the pilot. So they should be installing one of these chomp systems later this year, and then hopefully we can do a tour for NOFA folks once it's installed. Um, the idea is to have many of these installed so that folks don't have to travel far to see it. There should be one in all of our backyards eventually somewhere. They start at about, I think, 250,000 for containerized system. The system we're talking about at Global Village can be multiple million, perhaps even up to 8 million, because it's such a community scale system. So we're working on the project financing now and reviewing the economic model and how that would work. But there are a lot of grants now available. We're finding out more than 50% of that capital would be covered through the federal programs now. The Inflation Reduction Act, USDA, EPA, even local and state programs are now essentially dishing out grants, 6, 7-figure grants to help implement these solutions. So that's why Mass CEC has helped support it. And the idea is the in the end, it sounds like a lot of money up front, but over time, it's actually the lowest cost alternative because we don't have to ship and truck material. So if you think about like a cost per ton, the operating cost per ton to manage material, it happens to be a negative cost per ton because we can generate these co-products. So essentially, we can have shared prosperity locally instead of paying, waste management or other haulers to remove it from, our communities.
Um, what, what's your opinion about your, liquid product versus traditional compost that might be made out of food scraps? How do you compare that?
Yeah, it's a whole unknown world of, what type of compost there is, how does that compare to a standard product? I think what we're learning is that compost by itself is very energy intensive. You have to reject the water, right? So there are a lot of facilities that will install blowers under these aerated static piles in order to force air through them and evaporate the water. And food waste just brings more water to the compost pile. So that carbon to nitrogen ratio in the compost pile is key, and it's really hard to keep the right recipe. So this is a system that goes hand in hand with composting, where if it's liquid material, arguably it shouldn't even go into the compost. It should go into a system like this, and then you use the product as needed to enhance the compost. So
Yeah, and speaking as a compost operator, we have to bring our piles up to 131 for a week, and that usually goes up to 150, and all the things that it's burning up in there, those micronutrients in an anaerobic situation would, would remain and flourish, right? So that's why we're interested in this as well.
It's a complementary system.
Exactly.
Yeah, we would continue to use both. Yeah.
Right. Yes, it's definitely not trying to replace aerobic composting. It's really addressing there's a lot of vector attraction when you have food waste going into a compost pile. I don't know if you've seen that much on site, but seagulls and rodents and because you are off gassing it, and those gases will attract folk like different scavengers and whatnot. So it becomes overall cleaner composting process.
Can you describe the scale of the $250,000 sons community campus there?
Yes, sure.
Like, just in the community vision, in the perfect world, am I going to see one of these every 5 miles or every?
Yeah. Let me show. I'd like to play one more. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. Let me play this one more video, and then I'll shift to some pictures of that. Here's another farm that's started using
Our farm is Kizama, and it comes from the names of the countries we come from.
We are 2 ladies from Kenya, one from Zambia, myself from Malawi.
We grow a variety of crops, both from the U.S. and Africa. So we grow corn, cabbage, cucumbers, tomatoes, different types of peppers and chilies, and flowers. We got interested in the biofertilizer because of its easy application and the fact that it was organic. It would be good for our plants and good for our soil.
The biofertilizer is injected into our irrigation system that we use, and then just as we water, the fertilizer just goes through to the plants, and it's easy.
Our plants are extremely healthy. We had quite the harvest.
It was like a boom, because before you had to rely on applying the compost, which is also good, but it was a lot of work. So after the biofertilizer was introduced, all the crops just did very well. We are having a bumper harvest.
I was born and raised on a farm with farming grandparents, so that's been my whole life.
Where I come from, we rely on agriculture. And as we are growing up, the parents take us along to the farm. And my parents would give us an area of the farm for you to clear or to farm after you come back from school. So through that, we grew up knowing how to farm.
We all want to eat healthy food, and connecting to various communities is important.
We sell to our communities, African communities, just by word of mouth. We tell them what we have when it is ready, and they come right here at the farm and they buy it.
Okay, so again, echoing the value of the material. This is what a smaller system would look like. This is at a corporate campus, actually Microsoft headquarters outside Seattle, where they have a commercial kitchen. The commercial kitchen was sourced locally from the farmers, and then the food scraps go right into the system on site. That system generates heat in the form of hot water and pipes that right back into the commercial kitchen. So they avoid gas use, and then the fertilizer gets sent to their farmers. So that's one of the smaller systems. Here's the smallest system that currently is sold by Chomp. It's a 120-foot container. Oh, thank you. And that's the system that would potentially be, I believe, about $250,000 is where it starts. And so this uh, is at UC San Diego, where the campus actually feeds it. They have a whole program around STEM education there. And then you can see actually the gas here is piped right into the student center here. There's a fire pit. So the fire pit is fueled from this instead of frack gas. And overall, this is the capacity of their system. This is about 25 ton per year. And the one we're talking about, Global Village, is on the higher end, about 4,500 ton per year.
I have
Yes.
a question about collecting food.
Yes.
I've done some food rescue.
All right.
The biggest problem we had in composting the produce was the plastic packaging. Can this handle that and remove the stuff from it, or the plastic packaging has to be removed by hand and then you throw the?
Yes. Yes, the latter. We're not supposed to actually feed the bioplastics don't degrade. This system is body temperature, which is is mesophilic. So about 100 degrees is what the system is kept at and runs at. It doesn't generate heat like compost pile does, so it does need to be heated. But in that process, bioplastics don't break down at that temperature. There's another technology of digesters that works thermophilic, which is like 160, I think around compost temperature, that could break down bioplastics. But overall, we're looking for, source separated organics without the bioplastics.
And sewage sludge.
Not that I know of. It hasn't, because if you think about the nutrient and energy potential of sewage sludge, it's already been digested, of course. So there's less nutrients, there's less energy. And if you compare it to, food scraps, there could be 10 times the amount of nutrients and energy embedded in the food scraps. So it's a better use of the system in terms of the small scale nature of the system. If we were to fill up this tank full of the sewage sludge, it just wouldn't be as valuable of the co-product coming out of it.
Is the system able to heat itself as far as like how does it get energy to keep at temperature?
Yeah, there's shore power, essentially, like when a boat would pull up and have shore power. So if the system is not generating gas and storing gas, for example, if there's maintenance and we shut down the system, we would start heating it up with the shore power. So electricity or a fuel, for example, you can integrate it with heat exchanger for example, like a wood burning stove or biochar gasifier, recover that heat. So the idea is there would be an external source of heat, but once it's running, you're generating the fuel, storing the fuel, and you can do combined heat power so that when you're generating electricity, you recover the heat, so you don't have to actually use off-site, imported fuel or energy. So it's kind of like a flywheel. Yeah, exactly. So once it starts, you're generating about 5 to 10 times as much energy as the system uses. And I think we have a couple more minutes left. If we want. Yeah, please.
The bottle that you passed around, how many ounces is that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Might be 8. 8. Okay.
How was it used? Or added? Do I put holes on it? And
Yeah. I think what we found is about 1 to 4. So 1 part of this to 4 parts water is a good dilution rate, but it depends on your needs. So ideally, you're really dosing frequently versus just one-time thing. So a little goes a long way, and applying it daily goes even longer way. That's a great question. I actually don't know how much they're selling that product for. I help work with this team to get them off the ground and mentor them, but I can send around the website if you're interested. Any other questions?
Yeah, and if anyone's from Central Mass or Eastern Mass and has connection to sources, right, institutions that might be interested in this, we're approaching them now and looking. So please let us know that too. Tell us about it.
Yes. And thank you everyone for your time. We're looking forward to connecting with everyone more on this exciting project and hopefully having tours in the coming years. Thank you.
So guys,